How far will he go to push his Jets takes? How far will he go to get the Jets to trade for bad Eagles players? How far will he go to confuse Asmaniacs as to where he works because he keeps changing jobs like twice a week? It's the great Nick Faria!
Nick Faria joins us now live from a Panera right near the New York Jets training facility. Nick, kind enough to sit down with us and recap what was an intriguing day at One Jets Drive. Special teams period galore, and they didn't even let the media watch the kickers. So we have no kicking stats to report on. Nick, what happened out there?
No kicking stats, a lot of special teams work, a lot of just walkthroughs on offense. So if you're looking for a massive report today for me to say this guy looks good, that guy looks good, I don't have any of that. None of that happened today. A lot of special teams, a lot of stuff, a lot of walkthroughs, but that was by design. Aaron Glenn today spoke, kind of warned us early, like, listen, yesterday we worked in the red zone. We did a lot of work in the red zone. We'd love to have been there to see that, obviously, but today's all special teams. So got a little bit of that, no kicking stats. So if you're looking for anything more than that, unfortunately, there's nothing myself, Rich Cimini, or any other reporter can really give you.
There was an interesting comment from Glenn when he spoke at his presser before the practice that you guys watched, that Cade's not going to be out there. And a lot of people were thinking, oh, Cade York is still injured. But no, it's Cade Klubnik, the Jets' rookie fourth-round pick. What's the latest with Cade Klubnik and his apparent injury?
Yeah, nothing really too serious. I'm trying to remember what he said. I think he said it was his back or something. But again, nothing serious. They expect him to be ready to go for mandatory minicamp next week. Just want to be cautious. I mean, this is a guy that's going to be competing for the backup quarterback spot. You want to make sure that he's healthy in order to be able to do that. So they essentially gave him the day off in what was a walkthrough overall.
Before we get to some of the other things that stood out, I know you guys had a chance to speak with several of the Jets assistant coaches, which is notable. Let's talk more about Glenn's presser. What stood out? Anything notable that he said that you were intrigued by?
You know, it's the same thing. He kind of said something similar last week, and he's been saying this repeatedly. And, Jake, I know you've been critical of Glenn. We've all really been critical of Glenn. But I do have to give him flowers for one thing. He is far more intentional this year with his practice plan, with what he wants to do from a schematic standpoint, and that's allowing him to sort of focus on what he wants to see from his team on the field. I think last year he got kind of sucked into the Steve Wilks trying to marry his preference and Steve Wilks' preference and meshing that together to build a cohesive defense, which obviously was a disaster. I don't know if it's going to work out, obviously, with Aaron Glenn. I can't sit here and say this guy's going to win 10 games. This guy's the real deal. You know, we saw a lot of the bravado last year, and nothing really came of it. They won 3 games. But he's far more intentional this year, and I think it could lead the Jets to a more disciplined, a more focused, and I think an overall better group than they were last season. You are seeing a lot of the mistakes that Aaron Glenn made last year get fixed up early on in this process.
Do you think him calling the defense is ultimately going to be a good thing for this team, or is there a chance it's maybe too much responsibility for a guy who at times, let's be fair, really did struggle with just the basic premise of being an NFL head coach, having his team ready, challenges, game situation scenarios.
Seemed overwhelmed. Yeah,
right.
I completely agree. I think the one thing you looked at from Aaron Glenn last year is he looked overwhelmed from an entire perspective. And to make a comparison, Robert Saleh kind of said something similar. It was like not calling plays took him out of what the focus should be in those situations. So I think there is experience, there is history of play calling coaches keeping those duties and actually just being really good head coaches, because it allows them to focus not only on their side of the ball, but allow them to be ingrained into the everyday, every play kind of feel instead of looking at it from a managerial standpoint. So I do think it's going to help him. How much it will help him is going to be determined in those little perceivable moments in these games where it's a 2-minute warning and he's got to use his timeouts correctly, or he's got to throw a challenge on an obvious call, or kind of gambling in some parts. We have yet to see what that's going to look like this year. But from a practice standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, and that's really all that we can talk about right now, I do think Aaron Glenn has improved in that basis. The other stuff we won't know until these games actually start.
Nick Faria covers the Jets now for SI, is our guest as we recap what was a special teams heavy day for the Jets. The offense and the defense just went through a walkthrough. Mike Westhoff, the special teams GOAT himself, was at the OTA earlier. One, did you see Westy? And two, it is fitting that he was there on a day that the Jets really emphasized the Chris Banjo special teams unit, because Mike Westhoff gave the recommendation to Aaron Glenn to hire Chris Banjo.
It's the Westhoff coaching tree, if you will, for special teams. And of course, that's a guy that you want to try to replicate those coaching trees. There are some offensive minds. Listen, you want guys that have worked under Bill Walsh and Andy Reid. And then on defense, you want guys that understand the premise of Vic Fangio or Bill Belichick and all these guys. Westhoff is the de facto top special teams coach out there. And again, Chris Banjo probably is number one lieutenant, really coaching that way as well, having a lot of success. And of course, it's great to have the master come in for the disciple in that way and sort of help out, assist where he can. And again, like we said, we didn't see any kicking, but if there's one thing I think Jets fans should be able to trust going into 2026 is that it's their special teams unit that will be very, very strong for another year.
That's why, from like a kicking standpoint, obviously, I'm a little worried they let Nick Folk go, but I'll give the Jets the benefit of the doubt because they were great on special teams last year. Nick Folk was signed after training camp started. They moved on from their esteemed punter Thomas Morstead. They bring in Austin McNamara as a rookie. We're like, who, what? And he was great.
Better.
So they now are hopefully able to find the kicking version of what McNamara represented at punter at some point here. Maybe it's Cade York. Maybe it's Saunders, who they added. I know Glenn was asked about him. What's your feel for the kicking situation right now?
I have a lot of reservations just from an NFL and analyst standpoint. I have a lot of reservations about Cade York. Maybe he turns it around. Maybe he's able to play at a high level. But Sanders, however you pronounce his last name, I think that is a clear-cut pick for me. It was a really good pickup. I know the Giants dropped him, but the Giants have had their kicking woes as well. If there's one thing that I wouldn't trust the Giants on over everything else, it's kicking woes. For the Jets, I would absolutely trust him. So they clearly liked what they've seen on tape. They want to make sure that his hip injury is 100%. He's 100% ready to go for this year. But certainly I think that if he ends up winning the kicking job, that could be your kicker, not just for this year, but in the years to come. It's not like he's over 40 years old. This is still a guy in his prime who can play well. And if he's able to do so this year, is going to be in for a lucrative extension after.
Aaron Glenn said earlier that newly signed kicker Jason Sanders, quote, obviously did a really good job in Miami. Anytime we can get a good player that can create competition, we want to bring that player in to create that. I mean, he was excellent in Miami. And if you look at his numbers against the Jets in particular, this is a guy that kicked great against the Jets.
Listen, kicked really good at MetLife, kicked really good against the Jets, and a Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber performer. So the Jets going to need that on offense. I think they're going to be able to move the ball effectively this year, obviously a lot more effectively than last season. So trying to put that all together and make sure that you have the quality special teams needed in order to win some games, make some big kicks, very, very important. So I think this signing was very smart. And something that should be celebrated, at least right now. And again, if it doesn't work out, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world, because there are times where I think fans get a little too emotional on certain needs, particularly at kicker. You know, a few years ago, just to give a comparison, Jake Elliott was a fifth-round pick for the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals cut him in training camp over the last few days of training camp. And he was kind of on the practice squad, bouncing around through practice squads in 2017 before the Eagles had an injury in week 2 and signed him to the active roster. Now, Elliott is considered one of the best kickers in Eagles history. I know he's had some struggles in the last few years, but it's a good example to show that just because you have a kicking competition now, or there may be questions in week 1, doesn't mean it's going to be a lingering problem continuously, because these guys are cut all the time. It's just a matter about finding the right one when you need it most.
Nick Faria is my guest. If you're watching live, hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel and read Nick's work in Sports Illustrated. So I know the assistant coaches, or at least some of them, were made available to you guys earlier. What was the reaction in the room when Carl Dunbar was asked about Tavondre Sweat, and he said, quote, big men are like pretty women. There's not a lot of them, and everybody wants them. I like men who can move around.
I think it was just a collective laughter. This guy, Carl Dunbar, really intelligent coach. You can see it. Him and I had a little back and forth at the end as well when I asked him about David Bailey, which was great. But this guy's a jokester. He's a lot of fun to be around. It's really good having him back in the building for the Jets because you have arguably one of the best defensive line coaches in football, helping a very young group come together and play at a high level.
Dunbar's importance in helping to develop David Bailey. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I asked him today about it. I said, listen, David Bailey's had a lot of pre-draft concerns about the run defense, and he cut me off. He said, don't care. Can he rush the passer? And he was like, yeah, that's all I care about. That's all we care about. Get after the quarterback. Can you get after the quarterback? That's the number one focus for any number 2 overall pick. But he did answer later on, and he did explain it's our job as coaches to teach him and teach young players how to defend the run. A lot of colleges, he kind of pointed this to, a lot of colleges don't train players how to defend the run. If you're an edge rusher who can rush the passer well, they only focus on doing that. And it's kind of in a similar way to the NFL, but it's up to Dunbar and this coaching staff to turn Bailey, to turn Will McDonald into good run defenders. And as I just said before, if there's one coach that you need or should have faith in, that he can develop a player like David Bailey to be a good run defender, it's Carl Dunbar. So clearly a guy, a lot of jokes, highly intelligent, probably one of the biggest additions to this coaching staff for Aaron Glenn this offseason.
So I've been critical of Aaron Glenn, and rightfully so, but one thing I'll never criticize him for, the Dunbar hire, I thought made a ton of sense, was a great hire, and then you hear him say today, Aaron Glenn saying to you guys, that he would always link up with Dunbar at the Combine every year just to talk defense, talk defensive line, and he said if I ever get a chance to hire him, I'm going to do it. So that relationship that he had with Dunbar helped the Jets get a proven coach at a very important positional coaching spot, given the investment the Jets obviously made with that number 2 pick. And their relationship dates back to when Aaron Glenn was a scout with the Jets and Dunbar was in his first stint as the D-line coach for the Jets.
Yeah, and also I believe Glenn was also a scout with Minnesota for a little bit. He kind of told us the story where Glenn's brother, who was a linebacker at the time, was talking to Dunbar saying, listen, you got to link up with Aaron. You got to link up. He loves you. They want to be able to have those conversations. So he's known the Glenn family for a very long time. He's had a lot of respect for Aaron Glenn from a scout to an assistant all the way through. And really, the Mike Tomlin retirement, quasi-retirement, whatever you want to call it, was huge here because you know for a fact Pittsburgh was not going to relinquish the rights to Carl Dunbar if Tomlin was still there. The fact that it's not Mike McCarthy, he wants to bring in his own guys. He allowed some of the former staff to find their own way, and it opened the door for Aaron Glenn to come in and bring in a great coach like this. Kind of a stroke of genius in this way for Glenn to bring him in.
All right, Seth Ryan also spoke today. Seth Ryan, of course, the son of former Jets head coach Rex Ryan. What was the first encounter with Seth like for you, Nick?
So I again, when Rex Ryan was coaching the Jets, I was in middle school, elementary school to middle school. So again, young buck here, never really saw how he was to the media, but saw in clips. Jokester would give it back as well as he got it. He's a chip off the old block, Seth Ryan, man. He's quick. He's got a quick tongue, able to make some jokes. He had one today that I absolutely love. He's talking about the legacy. Buddy Ryan, his grandfather, one of the greatest defensive minds in NFL history, or architect of the 85 Bears. Then you have Rex, the modern NFL, the one guy that really caused Tom Brady to just have mental conniptions every time they play. And Seth was talking about that legacy, and he mentioned a story where Buddy Ryan would tell Rex, I want you to be a little bit better than me. And then Rex would tell Seth, I want you to be a little bit better than me. Now, as a son, and I'm sure we all can speak to this, our fathers have always said something similar in that way. So that was something that I think we all can connect to. We want to be better than our parents, better than our fathers. And Seth jokingly was essentially like, so I took his advice and I decided to coach offense instead. I mean, it's a great quote from a really young and energetic mind. I think there's a lot to like about Seth Ryan. And I think the only reason why we are confident, or Jets fans should be confident, that their offense is going to be better with Frank Reich calling plays is the fact that Frank Reich is using his old school West Coast style, and he's marrying it with concepts from the Detroit Lions with Ben Johnson. And I think that specifically is very, very important for the Jets this year. Seth Ryan has been around. He's a third generation Jets coach. Mentioned the fact that Buddy was on the Jets when they first won the Super Bowl. Then it was Rex getting to the conference championship. He wants to continue that legacy going forward. So I think it was a very, very positive conversation we had with him, and you are seeing exactly why he was a top assistant under Ben Johnson. Very intelligent, very quick-witted like his father and grandfather were. I think this is a home run hire for the Jets as well.
Seth Ryan choking back tears, according to Zach Rosenblatt. You just love that, tug on the heartstrings of all the Jet fans out there with Seth being involved. And you're hoping that because he is only 32 years old, he could kind of bring some young, innovative ideas to help Frank Reich put together the offense. And Reich is that steadying voice who's had success in the league. And him and Geno Smith could put together a good season offensively for the Jets. I mean, it's kind of wild. The last time the Jets had a winning record, Geno Smith was on the roster. Didn't start because of what happened that summer, as we all recall. And the last time the Jets were in the playoffs, they had a Ryan as their head coach. Now they got a Ryan on the staff. Mason Taylor, his dad, was on the last Jet playoff team, of course. So maybe this is what it will take for the Jets, Nick, to end the longest playoff drought in sports.
And I think the one thing, looking ahead, right? So Frank Reich is calling the offense. They wanted to bring in a stabilizing force to kind of help solve some of the offensive concerns. But if you look ahead, if they are able to be competent and play well from an offensive perspective and win some games, Aaron Glenn's going to stay as head coach. I think that the sweet spot right now that we all agree with is around 7 to 8 wins, but they're playing a lot better. The quality of play improves, and that will keep Aaron Glenn as head coach. But if they're able to turn this around, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whatever it is, there's a succession plan here where Frank Reich is 64 years old. He's not going to be doing this for 5-6 years with Aaron Glenn. I can't see that happening. But when you have Seth Ryan here, still 32 years old, still a young guy, you have a succession plan of Frank Reich helping stabilize the offense and then Seth being able to take it to the next level. Again, it's a lot of if, but you see a succession plan, a true plan in place to really help Aaron Glenn along if they can just find a way to win this season. I think there's reason to be optimistic about the Jets this year, but also specifically their offense. That really wasn't the case last year. At this point last year, I think we were all kind of saying, listen, there's a lot of questions about Justin Fields. He hasn't really looked good. The offense hasn't really looked good. This year, it's a different story. We have seen competition. The offense has won a lot of rounds. I think this could be an exciting year for this group.
All right, so in addition to some assistant coaches, you guys also spoke with Brandon Stevens, Armand Membu, Jamie and Sherwood, and Braylon Allen. I'll start with Braylon Allen because he said the quote that we hear seemingly from every athlete every year, I'm in the best shape of my life. But with Braylon Allen, you notice because he is a physical freak, and he obviously got hurt last year and didn't return after that game on Monday night against Miami early in the season. What were your takeaways from speaking with Braylon Allen?
The fact that he listed his weight at around 250 is absolutely insane to me because you have 4 or 5 edge rushers on the Jets that are listed at around 255 pounds, and that includes the number 2 overall pick in David Bailey. The fact that Braylon Allen is the same weight as David Bailey blows my freaking mind.
He was 238 last year, he said.
Insane.
So he added 12 pounds of muscle.
Insane. But, I mean, this is a player. Aaron Glenn said it today. He still wants to have a running back by committee. Breece Hall will obviously be the focus, but they weren't able to have that by committee approach last year because Braylon Allen got hurt in that game against Miami. The fact that he's able to come back this year, feels confident, will be very important for this offense because you do not have to rely on 25, 30 touches from Breece Hall this year. You can allow him to be the kind of player that they were willing to give so much money to in the offseason while having complementary pieces as well. It's very, very important in the modern NFL to have at least 2 running backs. The Jets think they have 3. But if Braylon Allen can step up in a number 2 running back role, that changes how this offense is going to look and how people are going to defend this Jets group.
Jamie and Sherwood, obviously a down season following the big contract the Jets gave him. Your thoughts hearing from him?
Yeah, he acknowledged it. And he said it wasn't my best year. I needed to improve in pass coverage. I needed to improve as a leader. And I think last year was a good test because not only did he receive a large contract extension, 3 years, $45 million, but he was also named captain for the first time at 25, 26 years old. And there was no C.J. Mosley to help guide him along the way. And he kind of talked about that. Last year, he didn't have that guiding presence at linebacker to help him go through the process. He has that this year in Demario Davis. So he's a much more confident player. He thinks he can improve a lot in pass coverage. We have to remember, in fairness to Sherwood, before last season, he was one of the better cover linebackers in the NFL in the short time that we had him. Has over 150 tackles, really good player, really athletic as a former safety. So it's a wait-and-see game for him. The fact that he doesn't have the same pressures as he had last year, I think will allow him to improve. But the Jets are going to give him the opportunity to play at a high level this year. They're not going to bench him. Doesn't look like there's any trade market for him. They're going to pay him. They're going to play him. And it's up to him to prove that he is still worthy of that contract.
The Jake Asman Show is now presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a daily fantasy app made simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build your lineup in seconds. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And PrizePicks is already offering NFL futures, including futures for New York Jets players. Take a look at the lineup that you see on the screen. Garrett Wilson, more than 4.5 reception touchdowns. David Bailey, he's going to have at least 7 sacks his rookie year. Arvell Reese, almost a Jet. I think he'll have at least 3 sacks in his rookie year with the Giants. That is a 3-pick power play, $10 to pay out $60. That is just an example of some of the lineups you can make over at PrizePicks. Make your own lineups today for any sport. Just download the PrizePicks app, use the code HMA, and get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Armand Membu. Obviously, if you're talking about a guy that had a great year on a 3-win team, it was the rookie who I think has a chance to be a regular Pro Bowl level tackle, if not all pro. That's how good he could potentially be. Your thoughts speaking with him today?
I think Pro Bowl is selling it short. I think you're looking at the next great right tackle in the NFL based on his footwork. Even just today, the footwork that he uses, the hand placement, it's next level. It's already next level from where he was his rookie year, and he had a great rookie season. I would argue by the end of this season, he is going to be the Jets' best offensive player and arguably their best player. And before people come at me and say, well, that's not a good thing if your right tackle is your best player overall, you look at some of the best teams in the National Football League over the last few years, and their best player has been the right tackle. Obviously, I'm pointing, of course, the Detroit Lions with Penny Sewell, the Philadelphia Eagles with Lane Johnson. I think you can look and see Armand Membu be in that conversation this year. The footwork is elite. The hand placement is elite. He's got the right size, the right athleticism. Everything is pointing up for him. He has had a very good OTA session. I'm excited to see what he looks like in pads when he goes up against David Bailey, because it's impossible to check it out right now. He's stonewall Bailey at this point, but there's no physicality to this. Bailey can't really use his speed in a positive way. I'm really excited to see what that looks like coming up in a month and a half.
And then the last player you spoke with was Brandon Stevens. I feel like Brandon Stevens got off to a bad start. He stabilized as the year went on, but the Jets were so bad, people probably didn't even really pay much attention to it unless you're like sickos like anyone watching this in June right now, and you who covers the team, and me, of course. Your thoughts on Brandon Stevens now in his second year and his potential fit in the Aaron Glenn scheme?
It's crazy to think about, but he is the elder statesman in this secondary now. Think about it. He's only been here a year, but the other corner is Nashawn Wright, who is a free agent pickup. Jarvis Brownlee was brought in early on last season. You have D'Angelo Pons. Minkah Fitzpatrick was traded for this offseason. And you have Malachi Moore and Dane Belton, who are younger players. Belton signed this offseason as well. So the longest tenured quarterback on this team that's going to be a starter. I know A.Z. Thomas, you kind of sat there and say that as well. But the longest tenured veteran corner in this secondary is Brandon Stevens. It's incredible to think about, but it's a testament really to, I think, how well he played last season, which was an underrated part. Last year, the Jets secondary was awful, but I think that had more to do with post-trading Sauce Gardner, post not getting an interception, and the safety play just being the worst in the National Football League. So I think Stevens has a chance to be a really good player, the leader in the secondary, and he's kind of owning that. He's kind of accepting that expectation. It'll be exciting to see what that looks like in camp, because you have Fitzpatrick, you have Wright, you have Stevens' veteran presence in this secondary to try to improve a group that was just the absolute worst in 2025.
Nick, anything else that we missed from today's OTA? And I look forward to reading the full breakdown in your articles, of course. But anything else we missed today from a special teams heavy OTA practice?
Yeah, I got to be honest, guys. You're not getting a takeaways day from me today, because there was just nothing to take away from. It was all special teams. But the one thing I will say, Aaron Glenn can talk about his superpower being calling plays. That's not his superpower. It never has been. And I think I said this last week as well. His superpower is relationship building, bringing in guys that can mold together to create a team. Now, it may not come out to wins, as we saw last season, but the coaching staff. Carl Dunbar is arguably the best defensive line coach in the NFL. He wanted to be a member of the Jets this season with Aaron Glenn. Seth Ryan is a young, up-and-coming offensive mind. He could have gone anywhere else. He could have joined the Bears and have an assistant role. He could have stayed in Detroit. He could have done all these different things, and he chose to come to the Jets because of his relationship with Aaron Glenn and the legacy that was there before him. That cannot be overlooked. And relationships are extremely important for coaching staffs, because if you have a head coach that can build chemistry within the locker room and build chemistry within their coaching staff, it's very important for a rebuilding group to take that next step. They still have to take that next step on the field. We need to see that going forward. But I think there's been parts and points of this OTA session where you can be impressed with the job that Aaron Glenn has done. We obviously need to see more, and he needs to be better in the in-game management. As I said previously, we're not going to see that until the games actually matter. But I think this has been a very good OTA session to sort of rebuild some of the distrust that was kind of seeped through the fan base with Glenn last season, where they had all these expectations, and Glenn wanted to build a team that the fan base was going to be proud of. And he kind of walked back those comments 8 weeks in, and everyone was at him. Everyone wanted him fired. This has been kind of a rebuilding session of him saying, listen, I've learned my mistakes. I know what I screwed up. Here's a better coaching staff. Here's a better roster. I'm going to be better, but I have to prove it. But right now, this is all that we can see. We can see the coaching staff improved. We can see the players have improved. If they're able to put it all together, I think Glenn has done a good job kind of rehabilitating his image a little bit in this OTA session.
Nick, you've done a great job joining us live from a random Panera near the Jets facility. Have a safe drive back to Queens. Hopefully not too much traffic. Really appreciate your time. And where can people find your SI stories on the Jets?
Yeah, Nick_Faria 1720. That's the Twitter handle as always. Appreciate all the support. We're going to have a couple stories here. We've got coming up talking about the big men, beautiful women from Carl Dunbar and Devondre Sweat. We're going to have a deep dive into Seth Ryan and a couple other great stories as well. So we've got a lot coming today over the next day and a half. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Nick Faria.
How far will he go to push his Jets takes? How far will he go to get the Jets to trade for bad Eagles players? How far will he go to confuse Asmaniacs as to where he works because he keeps changing jobs like twice a week? It's the great Nick Faria.